The new Naxx mini set is coming out on the 14th of February, but until then we still need to know what the best Hearthstone decks are right now. So in this video we will go over 5 of them, I'll show you their mulligans, matchups, and a little bit more info about them, and we're also gonna check out what are all of the other best performing classes. If you're serious about Hearthstone, definitely consider subscribing to the channel, and also don't forget you can hire me for some Hearthstone coaching. Now let's check out the decks.
You are not prepared!
The first deck on the list is obviously gonna be Unholy Death Knight, because literally the whole meta kinda warped around it, especially from Diamond to Legend. The deck is super powerful, super scary to play against, and literally the moment where the opponent can't actually respect a few minions on the board, they get punished by the 4-mana Grave Strength. The deck does a wonderful job at sticking a lot of minions early on, and not only do they stick those minions, they make them stickier. Like, things like Hawkstrider as well as Blightfang make it absolutely impossible for the opponents to actually efficiently clear your stuff. So you should have no problem generating tons of corpses, as well as having stuff to give Grave Strength to. You also have plenty of ways to make your games versatile, with things like Amalgam of the Deep, Nerubian Visor, as well as your School Teacher. And with these cards you can definitely do some pretty crazy stuff, and as long as you know what to expect from the opponent, you should be able to get some pretty good reactive cards against them. You also have Lord Marigar at the end, so you can finish off anyone who actually managed to go toe-to-toe with you for that long, and you also have Famished Fool for a bunch of card draw. Matchup wise, here's what it looks like, and things like Spell Demon Hunter, Blood Death Knight, and Frost Death Knight are gonna be problematic, but everything else looks pretty green. For the mulligan, when going first, you want a good 1-drop like Arms Dealer or Body Bagger, and Battlefiend Necromancer is usually your best turn too. Hawkstrider Rancher is also pretty nice, especially if you already have a 1-drop, because if this thing lands on an empty board for the opponent, they usually really cannot deal much with it. If you already have a good 1-drop and a Hawkstrider, you can even keep the 4-mana Nerubian Swarmguard, because that is literally impossible for most opponents to deal with. Blightfang can also make a lot of sense in certain matchups. Plague Strike can also be great, and also Trog on turn 1 is usually too hard to deal for most. If you already have a 1-drop, Vrikul Necrolite is also not a bad keep. When going second, here's what it looks like, and again you want decent 1-drops, and Skeletal Sidekick actually becomes your best 1-drop, because you could use him on turn 2 to kill something big with your hero power, for instance. But you could also just coin out 2 1-drops on turn 1, like Body Bagger into Skeletal Sidekick, and that is a lot of stats for a turn 1. Amalgam also is acceptable when going second when you already have a good 1-drop. Rancher is still nice in most cases, and again if you have a 1-drop, Vrikul Necrolite also makes sense. I'm not sure why Blightfang falls this hard when going second though, like it kinda makes sense for us to be even higher when going second, but this is what the stats show. And same for Plague Strike, like you kinda wanna be able to be reactive. If you already have a perfect curve, you might even consider things like Lord Marigar against certain matchups. For other good Death Knight decks, we also have Frost Death Knight doing very good. There's also this new Rainbow Death Knight, which is also supposed to be really strong, but the stats are not as good for it like with the Unholy and Frost. And we also have Control Blood Death Knight, which is also still playable, and it actually can do pretty good stuff in skilled hands. Death Knight will be receiving some serious support in the new mini set, including a Colossal and a Location, so all of those decks mentioned definitely look like we'll be getting some pretty decent support. On the number 2 spot, we still have Pure Paladin going strong, and this variant is actually using Carol Rome, which is not as popular of a variant, but you are fitting in Carol in here instead of the Katori. And with Carol Rome, you will be a lot more reactive, especially against Unholy Death Knights. The rest of the deck is basically standard Pure Paladin, and you have Light Ray, Countess, and Blood Crusader at the end. You have all of your good sticky 1-drops to begin with, a bunch of good buffs, Alliance Bannerman, and that's about it, standard Pure Pally. Matchup wise and for the mulligans, we're going to be looking at the much more popular variant. And as you can see, Frost Death Knight and Unholy Death Knight are not going to be your friend. Ping Mage and Aggro Mage as well are not going to be too great, but the rest is pretty good. For the mulligan, here's what it looks like, and again this is with Katori instead of Carriel. And when going first, you want a good 1-drop, Blood Matriarch on 2 is also pretty nice, Seafloor Savior, Stoneheart Vindicator, and even things like Alliance Bannerman, and depending on the matchup you could even consider keeping a class action lawyer. Like if you're against the Evolve Shaman or a Miracle Rogue, this might actually save you big time. Carol Rome might also be a good keep if you already have a good curve. And same goes for with the coin, but here even the Countess actually makes the cut, but the rest is pretty much similar. For other good paladins, we also have Control Paladin doing well, as well as Dragon Paladin, and the rest is just iterations of those 3. Next up, we still have Miracle Rogue going pretty hard, even after all of those nerfs. This is still one of the best performing decks in skilled hands in top 1000 Legend. This deck now is abusing Draka, and for that to work, you need your Mailbox Dancer. You also have the overpowered Concoction Plan, as well as Astalore, and obviously still the locations do make the cut, even though with them without having stealth, they are a little bit easier to actually deal with for most opponents. The big Draka turn usually consists of you spamming a bunch of Mailbox Dancers with Shadow Step into a ton of coins, into Draka for 10 plus damage. And if you actually manage to have a Sinstone Graveyard up already, or even just combine it on the same turn with all of those coins, you can do some serious amounts of threats in a single turn. For the matchups, Frost Death Knight is gonna be a problem because they can freeze both your big minions as well as your face, and also Aggro Mage might be a bit too fast for you, and again they do freeze a lot of your stuff. For the mulligan, going first, here's what it looks like. And again, things like Location, Potion Belt, and even Ghoulish Alchemist now are pretty good. Concoctor is also not bad since you're no longer using Maestra, and Blackwater Cutlass also helps you out. But normally you could even just equip it, so you can actually deal with the early game threats from some opponents. Potion Master Putricide is also a pretty sticky minion, and if you already have something good like, let's say, Ghoulish Alchemist into Potion Belt, you might even consider the Shadow Step. Going second, here you do have as well the coin, so Necrolord Draka becomes a bit more keepable too, and honestly if you already have Draka and Shadow Step, you could also keep Mailbox Dancer. Shadow of Demise might also make some sense in certain cases going second, because using this as a second coin can also be pretty OP. For other good rogues, we also have Thief Rogue doing fairly well from Diamond to Legend, and Death Rattle Rogue can still scam games quite decently. Other than that, the rest don't seem too hot yet. At the number 4 spot, we also still have Spell Demon Hunter, which also took quite a few nerfs, but as you can see, it's still very strong. This is still the Soul Stealer Psi variant, but you're no longer running the quest because drawing 6 cards is just an absolute deal breaker for this deck. You do, however, run things like Deal with the Devil, which is a pretty clunky card to actually deal with because it's a ton of stats for 5 mana, and the lifesteal is super awkward as well. You're also no longer running Steno in this variant, but instead you're opting for the Spell Power, Artificer Zymox, as well as Jace. You're also running the Relic package in here, but you no longer really need to high roll with Relic of Dimensions because most of your cards are not that expensive either way. For the matchups, here's the stats in actual Legend, and as you can see, Miracle Rogue is not going to be great, as well as Evolve Shaman, and also Phylactery Warlock might be a problem. The rest is pretty good. And for the mulligan, here's what you do when going first. You want your Location, Phantasms, Extinctions, Card Draw, and even Unleash Fel. Even though you're not going to be getting the lifesteal out of it, you might want to be using it for some control. Deal with the Devil is also pretty decent. And when going second, here's what it looks like again. The Relic package, Card Draw, and Unleash Fel and Fel Barrage are your probable keeps here. For Demon Hunter, we also have Aggro Demon Hunter still doing fairly well, and there's also the Just Relic Demon Hunter, which is also still working decently well. And on the last spot we have Big Spell Mage again, which we've already seen so many times. There's literally nothing new in this one. You still want to be scamming with Barbaric Sorceress and Belinda, and then into a ton of random garbage over and over again, till the opponent dies from boredom or a random Pyroblast to the face. Matchup wise, here's what the stats show for this variant. And faster decks like Pure Paladin might be a problem, but all around it should be fine. Mulligan wise, going first and second, you're always gonna want to keep your Belinda, as well as Deepwater Evoker. Farwatch Post is also great, Location not bad either, and even things like Akani can make a lot of sense. Amplified Snow Flurry and Reckless Apprentice can also help you in the early turns, as well as Pelican Diver. Mailbox Dancer, honestly, is also not a bad keep in most cases. When on the coin, here's what it looks like again, and it's basically the same thing, and Barbaric Sorceress becomes even more keepable here, even though I think it's not bad to keep it when going first if you already have a good curve going too. For other good mage decks, we still have Aggro Mage doing pretty well, Ping Mage is not far behind it as well, but at least Casino Mage looks to be pretty bad. For the classes we didn't mention, for Druid we have Ramp Druid still doing okay-ish, as well as Aggro Druid, but I guess the meta is not exactly super perfect for it right now, with all of those aggro decks. For Hunter, Beast Hunter is still probably your best bet, Shockspitter Hunter is still usable, but it's not the monster of a deck it used to be, and Face Hunter is also usable. For Priest, Control Priest is actually having some pretty good stats even though the sample is not too great, Undead Priest is also doing fairly well, and Quest Priest is still usable about 50%. For Warlocks, it's either Imp Warlock or Curse Warlock, but if you're actually pretty good at the game, you can also consider playing Phylactery Warlock, even though this deck is just a little bit too complicated, even for me. Even though I'm doing my best to actually try to learn it, I'm still misplaying horribly with it. And for Warrior, Enrage Warrior actually has some crazy good stats, but the sample size size is pretty low, so I'm not exactly a believer just yet. Apparently it is winning more than it's losing right now, so if you want to be trying that, go for it. So that's gonna be it for this top 5, guys. Hope this helps you figure out what you want to be playing on the last few days before the mini set comes. If you found the video helpful, a like and subscribe would be great. Thanks for watching. I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video or stream.